Good evening from New York. Eric Francis here with you, your friendly neighborhood astrologer here with a conversation other than about astrology. Tonight, I'm here to talk about individuation, by which I mean sexual individuation, and collective shadow, or you might say the relationship between you maturing and evolving and discovering who you are, versus this thing that seems to surround us quite often, that is there, it seems to serve the purpose of pushing back or making sure that when you wake up, you go back to sleep. That when you discover yourself, that you find reasons to undiscover yourself. That when you find some sense of your freedom, that is kind of hidden from you or taken back. And I think that this dance is going on quite a bit in the world, in many people who have some inclination to wake up. And it might not be just a sexual awakening. It might be more, it might seem more like a spiritual awakening, but the nature of Tantra is to understand, first and foremost, that there is no difference between the two. That when we say spiritual, a lot of what we mean is being at peace with our entire nature and expressive of our entire nature, and that must include our sexual nature, and because that's been held down so frequently and so diligently, it's created quite a lot of chaos. This discussion is part of the Planet Waves series and is sponsored by our subscribers. If you are one, thank you for being one. If you're not one, and you count on me being here and find some solace or companionship or information or reassurance from my voice, please do click on that subscribe button and make sure you're passing a little bit of your energy back to us. And if you can't swing the $14 a month for the Planet Wave subscription, which is really $22, I'll put a link to the Chiron Return website where you can choose the amount that you want to contribute to the work that I'm doing. I know it seems like everything I do is a labor of love, and that is true. That is because I am a well-integrated person. And so there's very little of my life that I could say, oh, that's just work. I really don't think there's much. I try to have a good time when I go and visit my accountant. All right, so individuation and collective shadow. So what's going on with this? What does it feel like, the struggle that I'm talking about? I would say that you know that you're in this territory when you start to feel things and you want to stay with those feelings. By things, I mean desire, curiosity for anyone or anything, and also I would include a desire to heal past injuries and past traumas. All of these experiences I'm describing are about some form of an individual awakening, some sense of discovering who you are or making contact with that tropism, that internal instinct that says, now is the time to discover yourself. And it's unlikely to be an intellectual thought. It's more likely to be a libidinal type of thought or a relational kind of curiosity about someone. It's got a little bit more of a burning feeling to it, a little bit more saute than just kind of intellectual concept. It's saucier, to extend the saute metaphor. But you also know that to express this, to explore this, to explore your own curiosity about whatever it might be, including yourself, you have to do things. You have to change a little bit. You have to something, but whatever it might be, to make that real rather than just being a head trip. And here's where things can get tricky depending upon your circumstances. And it turns out that the circumstances of the world make it very difficult for anyone to express their relational feelings, by which I mean anything having to do with a sense of love, attraction, and admiration, and that includes to express sexual curiosity and sexual feelings. There seems to be this massive structure that is built around us as individuals that has just made this area of our own most, our whole inner sanctuary of feelings and emotions and desires off limits. Now, it is no wonder why I think that at the outset of any journey of sexual awakening or discovery, it's important to confront the nature of the religions that we are all exposed to. And for the most part, in all of Europe and the Americas, with exceedingly rare exceptions, we are born into the tribes of Abraham, one of three desert religions, none of which are friendly to sexual experience. Be Catholicism or Christianity, which is the most anti-sex religion in history. This is a theological analysis will show this, that Mary was a virgin, therefore Joseph was a virgin, and Jesus was a virgin. We have all these virgins creating the universe, allegedly, right? It couldn't get less fertile than that. And then Judaism, which precedes it, is full of all kinds of strictures and was initially a religion that allowed for polygamy, but then by some deal, I forget which century, a couple of hundred years before the alleged birth of Jesus, shuts that down. And then the Muslims are bonkers around sexuality. It's almost like a competition for who can be more oppressive, who can inflict more guilt on people. And I do not brook the they make women feel worse than men thing, because I'm looking for the right word to use here. The agenda is waged on people, and let's say in the configuration of a man or a woman, there are certain things that can be done to the woman to make her feel alienated from herself and anyone she's interested in. And there are things that are done to men to make them be alienated from themselves and the people that they are interested in, principally women. And to say that one sex or the other has had it worse than the other is to miss that anything that is done to anyone is done to them to be done to everyone. And so, when you wake up, you're waking up in the middle of this, often in the middle of this mess of collective shadow. And I dip in to the literature, basically between the early 1700s and the late 1800s, that 18th, 19th century span, and the things that are written about sex are so damning. They are so vexing. I'll come back to this in a Sri Yantra studio on Planet Waves FM, my main program. But I've been collecting, quotations about sex that are designed to turn people against themselves. And I'm focusing on self-sexuality because that's always where again, I don't want to use the word attack. What I mean is that the manipulation and the turning people against ourselves, turning us against ourselves, where sex is concerned, always starts with masturbation. It always starts with self-sexuality. That is because it is the earliest form of sex. It is pure, innate sex, having nothing to do with relationships to other people, having nothing to do with reproduction, having nothing to do with morals. It is a child without a moral structure, without the ability to rationalize, discovering the nature of their physical and emotional existence. And just because it happens first, that is where the negative attention, the manipulation, is almost always directed. But just to give you a sense of how bad this is, and what it is that when you start to wake up, though others may not recognize this, you may not recognize it. This is what you're up against. I'm reading from the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal, which became the New England Journal of Medicine, from 1842, only 100 years before my mother was born. 100 years before Bob Dylan, Carole King, and my dad were born. So not very long. Insanity and Death from Masturbation by Alfred Hitchcock, MD. Just a coincidence. The other Alfred Hitchcock had not been born yet. The records of lunatic hospitals and the multiplication of books on the subject of masturbation have probably, within a few years, been a means of inducing physicians to attach more importance than formerly to this habit as a cause of ill health, and have thus led to a more correct diagnosis and even successful treatment of some of the worst forms of human disease. They're saying that the author, Dr. Hitchcock, is saying that some of the worst forms of human disease are caused by self-sex. He continues, evidence is not wanting, either from hospital or private practice, to show that the evil is widespread and constantly in action. This cause of disease is sometimes overlooked by medical men, either from false notions of delicacy or from ignorance or from a selfish fear that suggestion on the subject will be heard with displeasure or repelled with indignation. The medical attendant in such cases treats the patient symptomatically while the morbid cause continues in action, sapping the very foundations of health and strength, and death, ere long, closes the scene. You will die if you do this. This is just outside of living memory. And the way things work is that this information goes from disinformation goes from being something of which the existence is known to something where the existence is not known. It just drops into being an environmental factor that is essentially contaminating everything from from like behind and beneath and seeping up. Now, I'm not saying that this paragraph is the cause of something, but rather it is a manifestation. It is an expression of collective shadow, and it is clear to me, to the extent that I have studied this history, that the stuff that Dr. Hitchcock is describing is essentially religious propaganda. It starts in 1712 with a book called Onania, which is a kind of a treatise against the sin of self-pollution. And this literature could fill a section of a library, and it is all lies. The book Onania was an advertisement. It was like an infomercial for some product that cured the moral scourge and the physical disease of self-pollution. And by the end of the 18th century, it had been translated into like 15 languages and went from Grub Street in London to the drawing rooms of the high society, and was being taken seriously when it starts just as an advertisement. And so this is it is the fruit of the poisonous tree of Abrahamic religion, Christian, Jewish, Muslim. You can find the roots in it. You can in any of these religions, but the Christians especially made a massive career. They built the entire corporation on the idea that sex is a sin. That's it. Without that, there would be no church. If you want to read this history, and I suggest that for anyone waking up, you want to read as much of solid material as you can find. I will, from time to time, recommend books that I have found particularly enlightening and also grounded. And most of them were not written recently. And the book to learn about what Christendom did to us is called Eros Denied, E-R-O-S, Denied, by Wayland Young, published in 1964. And it will take you through the way that words, images, ideas, and actions were made bad, and the ways in which we were systematically shut down. And so what we're waking up from is a global, systematic shutdown of something that has more or less been directed at you personally, depending on the nature of your family, but collectively, it is being imposed on you every day. And the imposition from the collective seems to come from individuals. But the individuals are what you might think of doing as channeling collective shadow. They are becoming spokespeople for something far larger than themselves that they're very likely to have any understanding of. And I always think it's funny when people say, well, I didn't have any religion, so I wasn't raised with any religion, so this stuff doesn't really affect me. But no, it is the invisible things that are outside of normal perception that are the most influential and that I think do the most damage. And so if you are waking up to who you are as a sexual being, which means, more than anything, being honest about your desire and letting yourself acknowledge and exist with your feelings of sexual desire, which I include curiosity about people in a holistic way. I don't really think it's possible to kind of refine one part of the erotic spectrum and just call that lust and say, well, that's lust is when you have sexual feelings that are separated from any emotional desires, any sense of caring, nurturing someone, wanting to support them emotionally or feed them food, whatever. I think it's very rare that there's just, a prurient interest, as the Supreme Court defined obscenity. Usually there is more going on, and that more can be any form of curiosity, and it can also be any form of other agendas. And so one of the things that is somehow allowed by our culture is sexual opportunism. That is to say that it's okay if you have an agenda of like marrying the person, for example, or you dress a certain way to get a promotion, or you're willing to do something with the boss to get a promotion. Any use of sex or sexuality, in my view, just for the purposes of this discussion, that is not about relating, sharing, feeling good, expressing yourself, getting to know someone, caring about someone in some way, with all the attendant pleasure included. Anything that is not that, I'm not talking about, which is to say any use of sex as a bargaining chip in some way, as to put any commodity value on sex, all of that is part of the game of oppression. It is allowed because it is oppressive, and I think that society makes a big game out of making it seem like it's not allowed in some way, but usually when you see a lot of smoke rising up around an issue, it is there to create a diversion or a screen, a smoke screen, literally, to interfere with how that's actually the way things are normally done, and that for the most part people want it that way. They like it that way. So a lot of the rebellion is just a show, basically. The moral panics and all of this stuff. So we can relegate all of that to what I will call the power side of the spectrum. Any form of gaining an advantage over another person by any use of your attractiveness, sexuality, sex appeal, assertion, aggression, whatever. All of that is in the power side of the spectrum. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you wake up on the pleasure side, on the self-actualization side, when you wake up just wanting to be human and feel and express and explore and understand yourself in some way and do something with all of this that you're feeling, and and often this is going to happen when you're in the middle of a situation that does not readily facilitate it, where you don't feel like you actually can be real with others about what you're feeling, and then therefore the way to make sure that you don't do that is to not be real with yourself. This is the meeting place I'm talking about when I say individual awakening and collective shadow. And remember that the collective shadow is usually expressed through an individual. There are times when it seems to be expressed collectively. For example, through some form of a public scandal. That is nothing more or less than collective shadow. This is why I am so suspicious of any form of a scandal, because the scandal has always got another purpose. The moral panic has some purpose other than quote-unquote morality. The purpose of the scandal, whatever the scandal is, I don't care if it's that rap guy who had his freak-out parties, or Harvey Weinstein, or anybody, Bill Cosby, or the long list of female serial killers I read about today, a lot of whom have some form of weird sexuality, as you might expect. Not all of that is the same thing. It's all just scandal, and the purpose of scandal in any form is to hold you down, to kind of try to force down your eyes. And when you're aware that there's someone trying to force down your eyes and keep you asleep, or make you pretend that you're asleep, from that moment, you have total responsibility for what happens to you. Now, I recognize that a lot of the ways the collective shadow manifests is in the forms of relationships that we find ourselves in through normal societal, cultural expectations, like marriage, like relationships where child rearing is part of the relationship, like any form of a household relationship where the household relationship includes some sexual assumptions, let's say, or actual interest, and especially where there is a monogamous assumption. Often this is not talked about. This is a thing to be aware of, which is that monogamy is assumed. Monogamy is assumed. I know this from living, but the funniest version of the story I have is from Robin. I forget her last name. I think she's currently the executive director of Loving More, which was in its day a really fantastic polyamory educational educational publication, and had fantastic conferences. So Robin told me that before she got into this polyamory stuff, she was a wedding photographer. And after she'd be hired to be the wedding photographer, she would say to the couple, she'd be meeting with the couple to plan the photos for the wedding. She would say, "So, have you discussed whether you're going to be monogamous or polyamorous, meaning sexually exclusive, or allow other partners and into your experience in some way?" And everyone would look at her with this kind of confused look, and admit they hadn't had this discussion. And so we often will find ourselves in monogamous situations never having explicitly talked about it or made such a commitment. So when you wake up, you may find yourself in the middle of a monogamous situation that, if you're being honest with yourself, was only based on expectations and not actually based on communication. So this continues to press the question: what do you do in the middle of this? And the previous approach, the usual approach, is to either attempt to hold your awakening down, which is, I think, what happens a lot of the time. And this is how these generally unhappy, and also sexless marriages are created because the relationship has become a compact not to grow. The relationship exists largely as an agreement not to grow. And this is the question I always have about strong one-on-one, dyadic commitment partnerships. Is, well, what do you do when one person starts to go through a growth phase and the other's not interested or not having that experience at all? And this happens a lot. It's happening every day, all the time. And what the usual response is that the relationship situation, the environment of the relationship, includes some form of a commitment to hold oneself down and to not experiment, not express, not feel the things that to attempt to not feel the things that the party who is growing is feeling. Now, if the growth comes in the form of awakening to your sexuality, well, it's very easy. The literature from basically from the early 18th out into the mid 20th century, 250 years. Really, we're talking from 1712 out to I stick a flag in the ground when Betty Dodson held her first body sex group. The propaganda, which is the result of the deeper environment, not the environment itself, has been saying, no, this is all sin. There's something wrong with you if you have feelings, if you're waking up, if you want to explore your own sexual body. That is to say, the scope of your physical and emotional possibilities. If you if you start to have feelings for someone else, your sexual curiosity is directed at someone else, or you have feelings for your partner and they're not interested in you in some way, that you are you're inside this cultural and psychological structure where you don't get very many choices. You either get the choice to attempt to force yourself back into not being aware. You have the choice to attempt to open up to your partner, which I think is the first thing that has to be where there is a partner, particularly when the partner is a domestic partner. You live with the person in some way, and especially 3 times over, if there's a child or children involved, the being truthful with your partner is the only way out of the bind of the relationship, or this thing called cheating, which is to go outside the relationship and not say so. If you say so, that is not cheating. Do both parties agree to modify their previously unsigned, unspoken, generally presumed commitment to be exclusive with one another? Well, that's what would make the situation be a polyamorous situation. However, even where there is, like an agreement, a mutual agreement, that does not mean or even imply that the work is really being done within the relationship where it needs to be done. In other words, you have a situation with your partner. You have a life that you are living. You have this person in your life, and what are you going to do about this? So I think that the reason people stay quiet, the reason that they shut up, the reason why they attempt to suppress their feelings is because if they allow themselves to feel their feelings, to be present for their feelings, they're invariably going to have to act on them, and the first action is to say something. Unless you are creative and you create a space for yourself to explore yourself and your sexual feelings outside the awareness of your partner, eventually you're going to want or need to say something, or your experience will be in some way discovered, and then it will become a subject of the relationship. But what I'm suggesting here is that most of the time, for nearly everyone, individual sexual awakening is going to come with the awareness of all of these rules, restrictions, and strictures, which can go so far out into blatant judgment that someone might express toward you, the threats on a relationship because of your both awakening and choosing to say something about it, and then possibly some form of a collective scandal. And with the internet being rigged up the way that it is, and this kind of hive mind taking over, we can see that from a number of different experiences that there's all kinds of new possibilities for spreading scandals. I have hanging on my new Book of Blue wall here, I took down the periodic table of the elements here in the Planet Waves office, which had been up since COVID, which was initially a joke for all the people who said that I was against science. So standing in defiance of those who called me anti-science, I hung up a periodic table of the elements like the size of a barn. I have now taken it down and cover the wall with foam core, and I'm printing and hanging up my favorite photos. And one of them is a picture that I got emailed to me of a friend I was corresponding with when I lived in Europe. She was outside the country, and we found each other through somehow Planet Waves or Jonathan Kainer, and which is kind of how everyone finds me. So I opened my email. I knew she was married, knew she had a kid, and I opened my email one day, and there was an open group email to her entire address book, like about 250 people. It was like a thing you couldn't even imagine how long the list was, and included all of these photos of her playing with her lover, holding him, fucking him in various positions, and then masturbating for the camera. Very happy, all very happy photos. And it turns out, well, I saw it, my first thought was, wow, she's really coming out of the closet. And then no, it actually turned out that her husband got in to her laptop and found the photos, and in revenge sent these extremely intimate photos to her entire address book, which included all of her employment contacts, all of her children's school contacts, the principal and all those people and the teachers and all of that, all of her friends, everybody she had ever emailed with, gets this set of photos designed to scandalize. Extremely convenient. And so this is one of the reasons why it is, I think, vitally important to be honest with yourself and honest with the people around you as the primary necessity of growth and the main kind of solvent you have against this collective shadow, and that being to not support the collective shadow through secrecy. Whether that secrecy is denial, hiding things from yourself, or whether that secrecy is, I'm not talking about the people that you are the most supposed to be. You're the closest with. You live with them. You share a buddy. You share a bed, perhaps, and not sharing with them. So this takes courage, and probably more courage than most people have. And so that lack of courage, which is connected to all kinds of things, like what's going to happen, if I'm truthful, what's going to happen to the relationship? If I express what I'm actually feeling and going through what I want and what I need, and I don't mean the I'm not happy talk. I mean what is actually awakening within you, that's going to change the dynamics of your relationship. Now, it's also potentially true, and I think potentially more true than not true, that if you have a partner, that they are going through something similar, or they have some knowledge of their own situation, and part of your appeal can be to say, well, we can wake up together, we can do this together. It's not always going to work. Now, if someone is single, meaning that they have not made some form of a tacit or implied or explicit promise of exclusivity to some other person, they're for a free agent, you have less complexity to contend with, but you are still likely to feel as if there is some collective shadow that you're going to encounter. It is very unlikely, and I have found very rare, that people support one another in their sexual awakening. And the entire nature of the Book of Blue article that I published, which is included below this podcast, if we link to it, if you're on YouTube, just go to planetwaves.eu. That's the Planet Waves Substack. You'll see the Book of Blue article is all about how you open. Well, a lot of it addresses people in couple situations, and how you kind of express your awakening in the context of a relationship. But let's say you're not in that. Let's say you're not in the kind of relationship where you have to ask permission, or you think you have to ask permission, or you might say something and it might you think it's going to blow everything up, including the fact that you had an orgasm for the first time. I could see that being, in a very dark, negative, dense situation. I could see that being like, oh, you didn't wait for me. So all that, let's sweep all of that to one side, all those dynamics. Even someone waking up on their own is likely to encounter some form of collective shadow that is likely to be some form of guilt, regret, remorse, or shame, or wanting to be expressive, wanting to share the truth of who you are and what you're doing with someone, and not having anyone to express that to, not having anyone to who might be happy about the fact that you're waking up to yourself. And I think that the rest of the Book of Blue article and the rest of all of Book of Blue in total is about this form of acknowledging the awakening of the people around you after you acknowledge, it all starts with you being honest with you, right? All forms of awakening start with you being honest with yourself. So that is the nucleus, the center of any awakening process, is that you wake up to yourself, and then there's almost always a need to either share with someone and experience some resonance, or to be acknowledged, encouraged, and supported. And there are, in my experience, and I have a lot, there are not very many people or places that will be supportive of your awakening. And all of those forms of non-support, all of those forms of what may feel to you like a cold shoulder, eschewing, denial, something like this, are all forms of collective sexual shadow that most of the individuals don't acknowledge as collective. They just think it's them. They're envious or jealous, or they're put off in some way, or they are, those are the big ones. But it's not just their feelings. It is a collective feeling that they are channeling, and also that they feel emboldened by the righteousness, the claim to moral superiority in some way. The people who claim moral superiority are almost always the biggest transgressors of their own moral codes. It's almost always a reaction formation, not an honest assessment. And so what I'm getting at here, kind of long form, is that individual sexual awakening is a very beautiful thing. And it is also an opening to your potential to heal the things that hurt you in the past, that ail you, that are holding you back and holding your creativity down in some way. And you're likely to encounter either some form of resistance or some form of ignorance from the people around you who are not necessarily going to support you. And one of the things I am calling for is that all of us who are in some way sexually awake or aspiring to being sexually awake, which is spiritually and emotionally awake, be a safe place for others to awaken, to provide that forum, that space of non-judgmental treatment, such that you can be present for others who are going through their awakening process. And this, of course, means suspending the general rule that no one can have more fun than you. This is a big this is a big one in even in the most normal culturally sanctioned social environments, is that no one's allowed to have more fun than you. And so usually the person sounding the moral alarm, or the yenta, the gossip, is jealous that anybody could possibly have more fun than them, and this can manifest collectively as well. And so part of being somewhere that is the word safe is so overused, but a place where someone can experience their reality without being judged for it is a very important missing piece. And to be able to provide that, you absolutely must, in whatever way you can, transcend your envy that they may be having more fun than you. By the way that is done is with compersion. There's quite a bit in the new Book of Blue article, linked from the bottom, about compersion, which is a kind of erotic empathy and a kind of unconditional positive regard, which can come with some very good feelings for the erotic and loving experiences both of other people. It's not just about sex. Compersion is about the love that people feel for each other, as well as the sexual feelings that people feel for one another. And as far as your own awakening goes, it's very helpful to be gentle with yourself, and to not attempt to resist, and not attempt to block yourself, and to allow your feelings and your discoveries about your emotions, your discoveries about your body, your discoveries about the different ways you're sensitive, and your discoveries about your desire nature. This is a big part of this type of discovery. And desire nature often manifests as curiosity, right? Curiosity is a essential form of sexual desire, sexual curiosity, right? It's not all you got to jump the guy or fuck the girl. It's just the feeling of wanting to know and feel and understand. That is what I mean by sexual curiosity. Like, what is this person about? What is in there? So Easy does it, and there's somebody out with some kind of a machine. It's not snowing, or is it? Maybe it's snowing. Cannot have snowed that much for the snowmobile people. Do you have these people who they must have a snowmobile that they take out once a year, and then it snows and they get to go the wrong way down one-way streets in the middle of the night, in the middle of a snowstorm. Always a great idea. Outrun the cops, this kind of thing. But I don't think it is. I don't really see that much snow. I don't see any snow falling. But there was a lot of snow in people's minds earlier today. I don't think that has the power to fall on the streets. Okay, so again, the Book of Blue article on Substack has become a kind of a little mini book with nice, manageable sized chapters. It's printable. The photos are provided in printable size. The photos are intended as kind of meditation tools or mandalas that are there for you to resonate with. Like you may feel something from some of these pictures. I certainly felt something from every one of them, and so you are free to use them as kind of mandalas. And that is it for now. I may be back in a week or so with another update to this thought stream, all of which grew out of my January 28th article called Book of Blue, Bare Essence. So that is available for you, and I think that it is suitable for young adults. There's nothing in it that, frankly, any kid who goes on the internet has. They haven't seen any of this. They've just seen all the pornos, which they're being exposed to from the minute they can get on the internet. I don't care how good your locks and your fail-safes are. It's open season on that whole thing, and I'm positioning myself kind of anti-environment to all of that, talking about vulnerability and honest sharing and creating the spaces in yourself and in your life that are going to allow you to explore more freely and more honestly. You may write to me. There's a mail to link at the bottom of the article, but efc@bookofblue.com. Again, EFC, my initials, at bookofblue.com. That is, I'm the only person who sees those emails, and in my astrological consulting, I can focus on any of the subjects that I have talked about. I have done this since the beginning of my career as an astrologer, though I don't really hang a shingle out about it. But I'm sure you've deduced that I'm available to assist and guide personally. All right, signing off from Kingston, New York. It's 6:42. It feels like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and I'm going to go take a look and see how my pictures are copying. With the full moon, I kind of really what I did was I basically sparked up a couple of disk drives. It turned out to be the location where I'm copying 2.5 million photos right now off from an old drive that weighs as much as a cinder block onto an approximately the same size drive that weighs about as much as a key fob. That's what you get for 15 years of technological progress. And so that discovery happened around the full moon on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and then I've been kind of riding this wave of discovery and self-discovery and self-expression from late January, and have been in my latest, let's say, state of personal evolution. And, for me, one of the conceptual and cultural frameworks I'm surrounded by is the fact that I have readers who have certain expectations of who I am, all of which are you better make room for the rest of them if you have think I'm one certain way, because I will eventually get to every subject. So I've been doing some of that. All right. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in a different time and place. And leave you, by the way, with Dan and I. This is Dan Grimsland and I, collaboration from the Dan and Eric phase of Vision Quest. And this was composed spontaneously right on the spot. I handed Dan Grimsland a guitar that was tuned in a tuning he'd never experienced before, called New Standard by Fripp, and I played my trusty old sassafras, and this is what came out, and it's called Music for Cunnilingus. Here you go. All right, well, it's been playing. Lots of love, and bye for now.